What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today we are talking about Season 2, Episode 8, Necessary Evil. How's it going, Mike?
Keith, I'm fired up. Today, we've had a wonky week of releases and whatnot because we're adjusting our schedules for certain things, and so I didn't get to watch the episode until just now.
Oh my God, so fresh.
So fresh, so clean. Not me, though. I am fired up about this episode in a good way, I think. It all hasn't totally processed yet, so I still have a little brain thinking to do. As
opposed to elbow thinking?
Yeah, which happens quite a lot. Anyway, long story short, I'm really excited to pick it apart and talk about it with you and relive it. A couple of questions linger, nonetheless. Excited to be here with you, my friend. Back-to-back days. We're just firing it out. So thanks for all of you joining us. Let's get to it.
Yes, indeed. So if you missed it in your feeds, yesterday we posted on K&M Geekly. Definitely check it out. Should be in your feeds. And we'll probably end up in podcast feeds once Mike does that. Right, Mike?
Yes, it's coming. I'm going to wait till we get the first few out before I start that.
All right. Well, that's going to be fun. We did an entire episode all about the Halloween series. So I ranked every single Michael Myers movie, all 12 of them. Then we did a deep dive into Halloween Ends. So check it out in your feeds if you haven't seen it already. And while we're doing that, I think we should talk about our patrons, huh?
Yeah, Keith, we couldn't do the show without them. We try to keep it free for you here on YouTube until we can advertise the hell out of it. And until then, we were brought to you from the loving donations, the altruistic donations of our patrons. And I have the slide. Absolutely have it.
It's just so ready to go, right? You're not
there.
Loading it right now? There you go.
Keith, why don't you tell us who they are?
I'll be happy to. Our patrons this week are Brian Kaufman, Casey Clark, Cloudlover69, Jason Moe, Jorge Navoa, The Mysterious Worf's Boot Shivs, Alan Zimmerman, CRM Productions, Charles Babbage, and Grim Toys. You can join them at patreon.com/K&M, spell out that and get all of the hot bonus content, including watching Mike watch this episode. You can actually, if you watch them back to back, you can get about 3 hours of Mike's life in running time. Really just wanted to watch
exciting.
Mike's
How
life.
exciting. Yeah. Very exciting.
Yeah, that's, watch Lonely Cat Dad do Star Trek stuff. You can 100% do it. So super fun. Yeah, check out all that fun stuff.
Keith, and our patrons might just get this month before the month is out, or maybe early November. We'll see how it all pans out. But a little special episode of look at Mike's brand new toys, because I got something I want to share with you, Keith, and unbox.
I am excited. Yeah, well, you were texting me last night. I thought you were going to a baseball game or something because we couldn't record, and you're like sending me videos from a toy store.
Well, that's from Target. That's from a few days ago, actually. So I have forgotten to send it to you.
Well, that's always fun. Mike has got the bug. I'm so sorry, Jen.
It's true.
Hope you guys hurry up and buy that house so you have space. Because right now, you and your 15 cats now at this point?
Yeah, it's getting there. Yeah,
and yeah, just as many action
in girth,
figures.
it's 15 for sure. In girth,
I mean, in girth, I'm a whole bag of cats.
Oh God, let's go. Let's move.
All right, let's talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 8, Necessary Evil, which aired on November 14th, 1993. Mike, do you remember what song we were hearing?
Oh, no, I don't, and I can't wait to let me clear the pipes.
Yeah. You would do anything for the podcast, but I won't look up the song.
Is that Jim Steinman and The Meats? I would do anything for love?
It sure is. I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. So, classic tune.
Won't do what? Oh, get his cholesterol in check.
Hey, you know what? I won't do that either. So I'll do anything for the podcast, but I'm not going on Lipitor again. Not because I am against Lipitor and Lipitor is effective and safe, but I just don't want to go to the doctor because I have issues and need to talk to my therapist. Anyway, it's fine. All right, so the top movie was I'll give you $20 if you can tell me who the three of these are. Because we are watching The Three Musketeers. Who are the actors in The Three Musketeers, Mike?
The Three Amigos, I have a shot. The Three Musketeers, no shot. No idea.
Well, it is a very odd, very specific, and very early 90s lineup of actors. We have Charlie Sheen, Kiefer Sutherland, and Chris O'Donnell.
Okay. Hey.
There's, very successful TV careers after that. But then the other one's Robin. So
yeah, with
really,
nipples though. He had nipples.
Nipples Robin, of course.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what we were seeing in the theaters. That's what we're listening to in our ears. What were we watching on our standard definition televisions that night, Mike?
Well, we had Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on ABC.
Course.
The green glow of home, if you remember that one. That's when I think one of
Not
the first
at all.
times, he goes back to the Fortress of Solitude, I believe.
Oh, that was the episode of Lois and Clark.
Yes.
Oh,
yes. And then followed by ABC Sunday Night at the Movies, where this movie, do you remember this? A Mother's Revenge. Got nothing.
That was a TV movie?
Yeah, CBS, we had 60 Minutes, followed by
I feel like Delta Burke would have been the star
special.
of that.
We were doing a mini-series on CBS, Return to Lonesome Dove, Keith, part 1.
Oh, Lonesome Dove.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of my favorite episodes of Married with Children aired on Fox. That was the No Ma'am episode. That's where Al and his man compartments, there was like it was like an anti-feminist man group. I'm sure it held up real well.
a man compartment, is that like the Trill Pocket?
Oh, boy. And then NBC had Eyewitness Video on. So that's what we were watching in prime time. Sounded like an exciting night of TV.
Well, NBC basically just had TikTok.
Yeah, they tried.
Yeah.
They're doing the best.
Wow. Okay, well, enough of that nonsense. Enough of that chicanery and tomfoolery. We're going to need to talk about the hard news.
Oh, yeah.
The hard news this week, some very exciting health, continuing our theme of important health things. We have a miracle tea that cures. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Colds and flu.
Good.
Heart trouble, so you don't need your Lipitor.
Yeah, Meatloaf, get on that.
There it is. Memory loss, so you remember that Delta Burke movie you mentioned. Baldness, allergies, deafness, fatigue, and weight problems. I have pretty much all of those.
You better get on your tea, Keith.
I need to get on my tea. Also, UFO found in an iceberg. That's fun. Blind schoolboy sees with his ears, nose, and toes.
Okay.
That's quite an interesting.
Heard of some blind cases of blind people learning echolocation, so that's pretty close.
Yeah, I'd love to see what you see with those toes.
Yep.
And of course, groom's kiss kills bride.
Well, Keith, I have a thing about toes.
I sure do, Mike. I sure do.
Inside joke for the 6 people who watched KM Geekly this week.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the 6 of you are going to know what I mean by that,
Yeah,
and it will be not hilarious to anyone, not to you, but to me. Apparently, I find it utterly hilarious. All right, so this episode, Necessary Evil, was directed by James L. Conway, who last directed Duet.
I love Duet.
Indeed. And it was written by Peter Allen Fields, who last wrote The Circle. All right, so now we don't have a lot. It's funny. There's less trivia on the good episodes than the bad episodes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It doesn't mean it's
Though
not
I
trivial.
have to know who was playing the woman. I my guess was Kim Cattrall, but I don't think it could possibly be her.
It was definitely not Kim Cattrall, but it was a Kim Cattrall part.
Yes, absolutely.
She basically stole Kim Cattrall's part. But before we do that, we got to do something more trivial, Mike.
Now, Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia.
All right, so this first one is actually not as trivial to the world. It's kind of interesting, an interesting wrinkle to the story of this episode. So it's a bit of a spoiler for our conversation about a 30-year-old episode.
Okay, good to know.
But there was a deleted scene in which we find out that Palra, the Kim Cattrall part, was having an affair with Ducat.
Oh, that would have been an extra wrinkle.
Yes, and so that was actually shot, and Mark Alima plays Ducat was pissed that it was cut.
It does give that character would have given that character a little more agency, really. But I guess not agency, but it would have given her a little more reason to be as duplicitous. No, I guess it works either way, but all right. Cool,
well, it's interesting. I think it tells us more about Ducat than it tells about her, but I understand why they cut it, because it's not about that.
Right.
It it ends up, it would have been a red herring that would have made us think it was all about Ducat when it really wasn't.
Right.
So,
in fact, they really do a good job in this episode of keeping Ducat sort of how bad is he? Questions about him alive. But also within the first 10 minutes of this episode, for all I knew, she was having an affair with Odo. She was having an affair with Quark. She was banging everybody.
It was the Kim Cattrall part, obviously. So, all right. So, next up, the picture of Cesaro on the pad is actually of special effects designer Dan Curry. He put himself on the pad.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have.
Yeah.
You would have
Keith, you would have been all over the place. It would have been Keith photoshopped everywhere. Every frame, every hologram.
If it wasn't me, it would have been Charlie. So, for sure. All right. And the last piece of trivial trivia. So when Odo does one more thing. Of course, it is a reference to Columbo, because he's investigating it. But the writer of this episode, Peter Allen Fields, wrote numerous episodes of Columbo. So he was actually referencing his own work.
Yeah, great. It was a very Columbo episode.
It was a super Columbo episode. So super fun. All right. So you want to know what the Next Generation was doing, Mike?
I can't. I literally can't wait.
Well, they were doing Force of Nature, which was an environmental episode in which we learn, then quickly forget, that warp drive is tearing the fabric of space. So they end up putting in briefly speed limits on the warp drive, trying not to use it. Obviously, referencing what we're doing with our oil and the environment. But of course, that became very inconvenient from a storytelling perspective, so we kind of just forgot about it after that episode. But it was an interesting idea. I liked what they were trying to do. Ended up not being a great episode. Anyway, so the guest stars on Necessary Evil include not Kim Cattrall, but Catherine Moffat as Vatrick Palra, Max Grodenchik as Rom, of course, Mark Alimo as Ducat, and Robert McKenzie as Trazko.
Oh,
so
that character had a name?
I guess so. It's funny for a show like this. There are frequently fewer guest stars than I imagine they are.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, obviously our recurring cast, like Rom and Ducat, are almost just regular cast members. But only 2 credited other folks. Tons of extras, though. So, Mike, what do you say we hop into the screening room?
Keith, it is time! Dogs everywhere going insane.
Yeah, I hooked up my Echo in the kitchen so I can listen to podcasts while I'm cooking.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what it would be like I'm sure somebody out there is listening to this only, is like cooking themselves a delicious meal, and then that comes on.
Yeah, I'm sure they're like that, and then they're like, hey, Keith, could you stop touching the table, please?
What, is this bothering you?
And away we go.
You don't notice it unless you've got headphones in.
Yeah,
so.
Which is every person listening to the show.
All right, hold on. Is that better, right?
Yeah, just like don't do it.
That is never gonna happen. Have you met me?
I said to Keith, everyone, I was like, I'll get you an arm, like I'll get you a suspension for your microphone? And he said, I have one. I just don't want to put it up.
No, because it gets in the way. It's always in the way. This allows me to whatever.
Okay.
All
Look at
right,
that
so-
hairdo.
Look at that hairdo. All right, we begin necessary evil in the teaser. It's a dark and stormy night. Quark is talking to a rich Bajoran lady in a Bee Gees costume.
He's also sitting very oddly on that chaise lounge. He knows how to inhabit a chaise, is all I'll say
But,
about Quark.
Is there a non-odd way to sit on a shade lounge?
You're right. It is very difficult
forces
to look casual.
you-
Yeah.
It forces you into like a weird. It's like a pre-coital couch.
Yeah, Jens and I also often discuss, because she's all about the corner chaise, and I'm like, no, it's awkward. It's never comfortable.
They're so uncomfortable. It's designed to make you like, hey, baby, I'm comfortable.
Ladies and
yet
gentlemen,
I'm
in
pain.
the comments, I know this is what we're supposed to be talking about, but I want to know. Chaise lounge, thumbs up, thumbs down. Give us a rank. All right.
Thumbs down.
Yeah, I
thumbs
agree.
down.
Keith, we rarely agree, but here we are.
We rarely agree, and rarely is Jen wrong and we're right. But I think in this case,
I'm
that
sure
is
we'll
the
learn
case.
in the comments we are very wrong.
We're always wrong.
Yeah.
So Quark and this lady in the Bee Gees costume know each other from during the occupation. She had a shop on the station with her husband, who was murdered. She wants Quark to retrieve a strongbox that she hid there 3 years ago, and can't get it herself because she's afraid Odo will arrest her for said murder of her husband. Quark agrees to terms and leaves, and then a Bajoran dude shows up having secretly listened. It's a funny setup because it sets up a less interesting episode than we're going to get. But I guess I don't know any other way to do it, right?
Well, it sets up. The only thing it set up for me, I was like, I really wanted to know more about this lady, but I like that it's a bit of a red herring because it's not ultimately about her, which is kind of cool. It is, and it isn't. I'll tell you who it's not about, but he's in the episode quite a bit. Is this weird guy? It's like they found the weirdest dude to play this part. Not intimidating, not scary, not sneaky. Weird.
They frequently do that. They frequently cast very unintimidating people to play intimidating characters, like handle penis chicken face.
Yes, handle
It's
penis
like,
chickle
I'm
face.
gonna get you, Quark.
Yeah.
I'm scary. Roar! And it's like, no.
Also, the lighting in this episode, they were like, production meeting number 1, they're like, y'all, we're gonna make this one dark. You mean like it's dark and gritty? No, I want it to be actually dark.
Well, they're doing a film noir.
Yeah, it is that way, and I commented that from the very beginning, and that's great artistic design because not only is it noir-y in its setups and its lighting, but in the scoring. There's a tonal shift clearly in the score, which I think works exceptionally well.
Yeah. So we begin Act 1. We hear a station security log from Odo.
Awesome.
He's annoyed that Cisco is making him take notes. This is the first time we've heard Odo do this. And I really like it too, because he's sort of doing a day in the life of Odo, doing his inner monologue, which he
and
never
then later
does.
in the episode, he also does. He's like, is this even tonally correct for a Starfleet log? I don't care.
I don't care.
Yeah.
No, and it is, again, film noir.
Did they
It
change
was a
his
dark and
office,
stormy
Keith?
night, and the broad came in, and blah blah blah.
His office seems different.
I don't think so.
Like this office is different than like when we see him with Kira Nerys later at the end. Well, man, I don't know. Maybe he's got a couple of different like locales.
It might be a different angle.
Yeah.
Might be just a different setup. But it's possible. I mean, they were always adjusting and changing things as they happened. So, anyway, so it's late at night, and they're turning out the lights on the promenade. Because, again, why? It's an airport. There's no night in an airport. But for our purposes here, it's nighttime. And Quark and Rom sneak up to what used to be the ladies' shop. Rom says he can get in faster. He's figured out a way to break into stuff very efficiently at Quark's. He has his own lockpick set and breaks in easily. So we're beginning to see, hey, maybe Rom's technical skills aren't... Rom, maybe not the dummy everyone treats him as, or at least he's got some skills here.
Mm-hmm.
They take out large clunky flashlights and go to the panel. Rom also has a plan to open it using magnesite drops, which is similar to what they did in Breaking Bad.
Oh, cool.
Using chemistry to break into your stuff. Very cool practical effects. And the panel opens, and inside is a little box. I thought the practical effects they did there looked
every time
amazing.
they do practical effects, I generally enjoy it. And I thought it was a really cool, they always have really cool, unique shots, at least one or two each episode. And I thought this was one of them.
Yeah, like an inside the panel shot from it's the box POV. But yeah, it's always cool. So later, Quark naturally opens it and is disappointed to see that it's just a piece of paper with 8 Bajoran names on it. Rom goes off in search of a camera, and the Bajoran guy comes in and takes the list from Quark at phaser point. This was before everyone was carrying a camera with them at all times. So I love I gotta go get my my Insta camera, and then click. I don't know if it came out, but
hopefully.
Oh yeah, we're old. So the guy shoots Quark, who is thrown back a good 20 feet in quite the stunt. Like, if you actually go back and watch that, they had him obviously had a cableman yanked him back, but that they really yanked him back.
Yeah. And they do the cool tease. Obviously we know in the future he's not dead, but they do a cool ending Act 1 as is he dead? Yeah,
Rom arrives and says Quark has been killed. Whatever noise he makes. Rom throughout these first season and a half goes through so many different flavors of Rom and characterization, but this is now full Rom, right? Because when we first meet him, he's like, meh, meh, meh. I'm a Ferengi, I'm smart and sort of cranky. Then he's sort of dumb, and now he is like this. No, he's the Rom we know and love.
Yeah, and I love the interplay, and I'm sure it's going to go on for the seasons and seasons of them both basically not caring if the other one dies and kind of planning based on that. But then also it's funny and it's very indicative, I guess, of the Ferengi culture. But every time it makes I'm amused.
Well, they're brothers, right? Yeah. So I hope that you get pushed in front of a bus so I can get your G.I. Joes. But then I don't actually want that. But I do want those G.I. Joes. Yeah. But it's all of those things. So Act 2 begins, and Bashir has arrived and is desperately trying to save Quark. He asks what type of weapon hit Quark, and Odo guesses immediately it was a compressed Tetrion beam weapon because the scanners can't detect them. Which begs the question, hey, maybe pay for the full weapon detection package, because if there's a weapon, maybe put in a little detector
they would have, Keith, but they went to a subscription model, and everybody knows that's a huge turnoff, so...
Oh no! It's such a how many upgrades?
Yeah,
do you have to have?
And save my ass. Come on, just give me.
And yes, you can get the annual package, but I don't want to put out $200 right out of my pocket right this minute.
No, wrong price point. All right, I thought this was a great effect. This hovercraft gurney was pretty cool.
Yeah, they roll Quark off in the Federation anti-grav unit. Wait. So they were lying to Melora that whole time? Because remember, 2 episodes ago, the anti-grav technology doesn't work on the station.
Yeah, but we got this cool thing. We can do it from this angle. We just couldn't shoot a whole episode that way.
Were they hazing Melora, just lying? I don't know. Maybe I understand why she was so pissed off.
Speaking of pissed off.
Yeah. But I do think it's interesting here. Bashir's losing his cool a little bit. As he's zapping Quark with the paddles. And I think this is where we start to transition from a sort of fun whodunit to there's some real stakes in this episode. And this is going to go in a more serious direction than we necessarily started, which I think is interesting. So Rom is despondent until Odo reminds him, hey, you know what? If Quark dies, you're going to get the bar. And then Rom realizes he's being interrogated. And Odo says he's not as stupid as he looks.
And let's not forget, Ben is giving you the best of all side-eye. He's just side-eye this episode, and I'm here for it.
I mean, come on, Cisco side eye, hashtag Cisco side eye
Yep.
is the best. And it's interesting because the first couple of seasons, Cisco does a lot of like side eye. Later in the series, he gives you just like full on eye contact because he stops observing, he starts taking charge. So that's going to be fun.
We haven't had a great Ben episode in a little while. I'm here. I'm waiting for it.
That's true. We haven't. Well, hold on to your hat. Cisco tries to defend Rom, but let's all remember that Rom literally tried to assassinate Quark last season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's like, oh no, it's his brother. He'd never. Yeah, except for he very much did. Then he scary whisper Cisco tells Rom to spell the beams, and he immediately does. He tells Odo
BEAMS, spell the beams?
No, beans.
Spill the beans, Keith, is what you meant to say.
Mike, I need you to spill the beans.
Please.
I'm scary whisper Cisco.
Could you please spell the beams?
Spell beams.
We're basically Quark and Rom, but who's who?
Ooh, that's a...
Let us know in the comments below.
Yes.
Oh, please don't.
Because I think we're both Quark with Rom's incompetence.
Yeah, we're both a little quarm. Let's keep going. Rark.
Rark. All right, you're Rark, I'm Quam.
Okay.
Oh, what's happening?
I don't know.
There we go.
We need some friends, I think.
I think we desperately need some friends. So when Rom mentions the box was hidden during the Cardassian occupation, and the store was a chemist shop, Odo is immediately interested. He opens the door and steps back into his memory of the past. DS9 is now darker and bluer, as are Odo's costumes. And we are now in the past during the Cardassian occupation. And this is where the lighting and effects are amazing.
Yes.
The shift here.
Awesome. Though it does bring up my one wormhole.
Okay.
That maybe you can fix for me so I don't have to bring it up later. So we learn through this episode that this was only 5 years ago.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
So, which is cool. But, so it was like first order of the business wasn't just when we took over the space station. It wasn't like, let's clean up. It was, let's completely relight the whole place.
I think just turn the lights on.
I don't know, because Quark's bar is entirely different too.
Well, I mean, look, we know changing the lighting is really simple. I mean, you just say, hey, Google, make the lights be whatever.
I guess you're right. It's just like I love the shift. It's just like, it's such a radical departure, but I guess it just shows that the Cardassians weren't particularly interested in aesthetic.
Well, I think they were interested in aesthetic. They just had a very different aesthetic. It's very it's very sort of imperialist and very.
So here's what I want. Okay, whoever's listening, creators out there who are looking for a new spin on the Star Trek universe. I want the 5-year HGTV show. Respecking DS9. That's what I want. I want to follow like the couple that lives in a farmhouse that comes onto DS9 and like redoes.
So like, welcome to DS9 Flipper Flop. They've got 6 weeks and $40,000 to turn DS9 from a dank and Cardassian shithole to a beautiful Federation family-friendly theme ship.
100%. But by the way, well done. Well improv, Keith. No
I watch a lot of
anti-grav.
this.
We didn't have time for
That's right.
There's no budget for that.
Well, boy, we anticipated being able to use anti-grav units, but as it turns out, the inspector came and said, nope, they're structural. So what are we going to do, folks? Let's have a meeting.
Also, this screenshot is, sorry, I'm going to get us out of the bit and back into the episode.
Okay, thank you.
This screenshot is like totally Odo as a Sith Lord, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and because he's very imperial, he's kind of scary. Mm-hmm. At this point.
But I mean, I guess this is cool. So back into like jokes aside, already I can tell, oh shit, we're getting sort of Odo origin story and ish of how he became like a security officer / investigator and how he was treated on DS9 by the Cardassians, which I think is cool.
I think it's super fascinating, and I think this episode in learning who Odo is very important, and watching him change. And you can see in Renee's performance, this Odo was very different
Mhm.
from the Odo that we know and love later.
Well, and also his
So-
relationship with Kira.
Well, yeah, we get to see here the first time Kira and Odo meet, and the first time Quark and Odo meet, which is fascinating. So I love that. So Odo has been summoned by Gul Dukat, who at this point is in charge of the station, which we knew he was, but we hadn't seen him in action yet. He first met Odo 2 years before, when Odo was forced to perform stupid Odo tricks for the Cardassian High Command. This was one of the reasons Odo left the Bajoran scientists who were studying him. And this is very important backstory for Odo. Now, I forget, because I have stuck in my head, like, I know the whole story. How much of the story has been told yet, Mike?
Mhm.
Do you know much about Odo's time with the Bajoran scientists, or how that worked yet?
He gave us a little teeny bit of insight that he was sort of mistreated and experimented on and such, but that's about it.
Yeah, okay. But we get the idea here. He's being treated like a sort of like a carny act, and making him do stuff, and that's why he left. And so he's and you can see, actually, the screenshot's perfect. Odo's body language
Mhm.
in the past is very different. He's very head down. He's very collapsed onto himself. He doesn't have the confidence. He feels more insecure, more vulnerable.
Well, he makes
Yeah.
he makes a comment throughout the episode, especially in the flashbacks, about how he's an outsider. He's an other. He doesn't belong to the Bajorans. He doesn't belong to the Cardassians. But he's forced to. They keep, the symbolism here is he's continually asked to take a side, and I think that's the
Yeah.
really central theme of the episode, and it's cool.
For sure. So Dukat asks Odo if he has seen a dead person before. And he says, sure, I've seen him in the mines. And Dukat dismisses them merely as casualties, which, of course, very much explains the Cardassian point of view. During the occupation, they're forcing people in labor camps, and they're dying right and left. It doesn't count. It's just casualties of war. Then Dukat shows Odo a body of a murder victim and tasks Odo with the job of investigating the crime. Odo doesn't want to be a Cardassian agent, but Dukat says he will merely be an investigator. His commanders, Dukat's, would just have him execute 10 Bajorans at random and call it a day. But Dukat wants the murder actually solved. And he thinks that Odo will have a better chance of finding out what happened because he's seen as a neutral force and more likely to be trusted by the Bajorans.
That's how altruistic of Gul Dukat, huh? To actually want to
Yeah.
solve the murder.
Well, and that is the mystery of Dukat, right? Because his motives are never what they seem and rarely good, but his logic is sound. He's like, yeah, I mean, Odo is much more likely to be able to solve this murder.
Well, we find out later it's not just simply wanting to solve the murder. I mean, but
Well, of course not. Of course not. Well, that's why his motives are always shifty.
well, and as far
but-
as he knows, he's banging that lady too. So
Well, that is true. In his performance, he's like, yeah, I just filmed a scene where I'm banging the lady. So there it is. So the investigation begins as Dukat introduces Odo to the victim's wife. This is the woman we met with Quark in the future. She says that her husband was having an affair with a new woman who just showed up on the station recently. Odo wonders why she hasn't cried yet and assumes she is going to accuse this other woman of the murder.
So what I learned from this bit, aside from the fact that in the past, it's only 5 years in the past, but at least 30% less hair. We also have learned that Odo he's not just, this was really cool to me because it really ties into his experimental stuff or his investigatory skills. He's not just mimicking these forms that he can take on. He actually has to study them and really observe in order to be able to do that. At least that's what I picked up. So a lot of his Sherlock Holmesian observation skills here tie directly in because he's the whole thing about him sort of being a court jester and kind of doing tricks for everybody. He's had to really study these various forms in order to, so he's very observant because of that. And that makes him a good investigator.
Well, I think that's exactly right. And if you think about Odo, especially at this point, but kind of in our present as well, he doesn't really have a lot of friends. He doesn't have much of a social life. He doesn't have a job at this point. So what can he really do but just sort of sit there and watch people?
Actually, Keith, it dawns on me, if I'm remembering correctly, that the episode where we learned the most about him was in Duet. That's when we learned about his backstory with the scientist and such, when he's in the elevator. So, no, that wasn't the elevator. What's the elevator?
No, that was
episode?
The Forsaken.
Oh, okay, that's the one. So, okay, the tie I'm trying to make doesn't exist. I thought it was the same writer, but it's not.
Well, but both of them were episodes of Deep Space Nine.
Ooh, okay, we're on to something here.
There's the connection. Yeah, there you go.
Asshole.
So we see a shot of the promenade, and we see that it has a giant fence separating the Bajorans and the Cardassians. Which again, it's like I think the set design here is amazing because you can really get a sense of the oppressive and like sort of scary looking. Look, we're drawing obvious parallels, right? But those fences and those barriers are very brutal. It's brutal looking and feeling. It's very, it's very imposing. Odo and the wife walk through the Bajoran sector. She and her husband had private quarters, which is rare for Bajorans. Then she points at the woman who was having the affair, and dun dun dun, it's Kira. So we head back to the present, and of course, Kira walks up to Odo. She's heard about the list, and she wonders if it had to do with the Vatric murder, i.e. the woman's husband. I love shifting back and forth in time, because it obviously has only been 5 years, but it's so different. Everything is so different. All the people are so different.
The people are different, and their relationships are different, and their status are different, and yet there are clearly loose threads. So it's cool that we get the vibe that we're tying it up, and it's still connected.
Well, and we're continuing to reinforce, and we have the entire series, just how much the station and the people on it are still affected by the occupation and what happened there. And Kira, her entire life was in the occupation. She's only been out for like a year and a half.
Yeah, and what's really unique too about, especially in truncated storytelling, which often 45 minutes feels, is that the meta-narrative is a singular mystery, whereas we're also getting two separate mysteries, but they're all connected in one story. So the tying of both timelines together is actually seamless every time. So when they do these cross cuts with the same characters, it's not a trick. It's very effective because you're sort of continuing the narrative. It's cool. Well,
and it's very human, right? Because how much of our present is defined by the past?
Yeah.
And this is a very extreme example, right? All roads lead to the occupation. But even us talking shit to each other, that's tied to our past. That's tied to 20 years of whatever and our experiences and the subtext. And I don't know. I think it's very interesting. So we begin Act 3, and Odo recaps the story. Thank you. We got a sandwich, missed some of it, and tells us that after 5 years, he's never solved Vatric's murder. He continues to interrogate Rom, and Rom is excited to get back to his bar.
Time out.
But Odo...
Time out. Sorry. Just to revisit, the set is awesome. In just their establishing pan shots, we've got this amazing creature design here, which isn't even in focus. We've got an amazing door design in the background, and then we've got this like weird fish tank back illuminated,
which I've never seen before.
No, and this is just a establishing shot that in a pan. that I caught on a screenshot. I mean, it is awesome. Okay.
All they're doing is setting their time and
Yeah.
place. It's, I mean, yeah. I really want to be on that
And
set.
so unique from all other Trek stuff I've seen, to your
Yes.
point about Deep Space Nine, which I think is cool.
The setting, the visual, because it's Cardassian architecture, not Federation. It's just patently different than anything we see on any of the shows. And you know, and is Voyager different from the Enterprise? Yeah, but it's still very recognizably Federation design.
And also shout out, like, what I love is that even like species, right, just like humans, so Ferengi here, just because they're both Ferengi, the design, the facial design of Rom versus Quark, completely different. The shape of their head, the size of their head, the incredible detail in their different teeth, really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Rom's snaggletooth is part of the storytelling.
Yeah.
Right? It shows where Rom is in the food chain, you know, like he didn't get Ferengi braces. Like there's something going on. It's, I don't know, it's just great detail design. So Rom's excited to get back to his bar, and Odo reminds him Quark isn't dead yet. So Rom immediately wants him to pull the plug.
He wouldn't want that. He wouldn't want that. He's not being artificially held together. Oh, he wouldn't want that.
No, he wouldn't want that. No. Just
I LOL'd there. I LOL'd.
It's pretty funny. And Odo, thanks, Quark. Odo takes Rom through meditation to try to get him to remember the names on the paper, which is actually a thing.
Mm-hmm. And he gets one.
He gets one. He thinks he remembers the name Chesso. Then we, again, really cool just direction here. We just see a shot of happy children playing on the promenade as Kira comes up to talk to Odo about the past. And we get the idea that something definitely went down.
You know, to your point, Keith, you know, we see the happy children running. And in the first establishing shot, when we saw the fence that you had mentioned before, they had little children running around, like the occupied children.
Yeah.
So it's a cool little.
Well, and we're about to go directly and see them.
Mm-hmm.
Just really cool, you know, like way it is, the way it was.
Sometimes you can show, not tell, which is cool.
That's right. We go back to the past. It's much darker and bleaker, and here's where we see children literally holding on to the fence. It's woof. Odo goes up to Kira in the past.
Ponytail Kira, don't forget.
Ponytail Kira, and she immediately recognizes that Odo is a security officer. She denies killing Vatrick, but she also denies that they were having a romance at all. She asks Odo to think about why Dukat is using him. Again, what side are you on? The question of the episode. Odo pokes some holes in her backstory about how she got to the station and this, that, the other thing, and questions her alibi. He tells her not to leave. She says, which I'm not sure, like, under the occupation, do they have the ability to leave? She obviously got there. I mean, I guess they can travel with permits or whatever between the station and Bajor. But it's obviously not a free society. She says, of course, he's going to have to choose a side between Cardassia and Bajor eventually. We head back to the present. Odo goes to Bajor to meet with the widow again. She denies knowing anything about the list. We know she's lying. She seems shifty, and Odo Columbos her. She seems rich, but it turns out she's out of money. And but she says, I got a loan from a friend. So we begin Act 4. Quark is still clinging to life in the infirmary. Kira comes in and says she's found Chesso. Turns out he's dead. And there's the picture of the prop designer. Turns out he's dead. He was murdered last night. He has Kira, Odo, has Kira mobilize the Bajorans for an investigation. We head back into the past, and Quark is happily running his bar during the occupation. Perfectly happy. This is great for Quark. Odo meets him for the first time. Quark wants to hire him to do tricks, but he does confirm Kira's alibi for the murder. Says she was auditioning for the job. Now, as Kira immediately shut down Odo, thinking that he was
Pervy.
it was propositioning her as a sex worker. This, of course, allows Odo to see that she's lying, because she said that's not on the table, or knowing that that Quark is lying here. Odo spots
which I
the
think
lie
is
immediately.
a great deal. Which is obviously
Yeah.
it's a little on the nose, but regardless, it's really great writing. I mean, the plot writing and pacing in this episode is pretty ironclad.
Yeah.
And like there's nice breadcrumbs set up and there's payoffs and whatnot. I think it's really great in that regard.
And it tracks. And it turns out she paid Quark for the alibi, which also all of that tracks. Quark doing that, totally fine with that. Dukat arrives and asks if he should arrest Kira. Odo says not yet. All you have is a broken alibi. You do not have proof of a murder. We head back to the present and see Dax and Cisco, and Odo tells them that he's possibly cobbled together the list of names based on the Vatric Widow's communications. So this is where good investigatory work happens off screen, but they checked the Widow's communications. She's had communications from 8 people, and they've all sent her money.
That's the only part that it seems very convenient, right? Is that she's not very good at being a baddie. Like she's got all these henchmen and she went to Quark, but like she doesn't have a better, or maybe she's desperate, right? I guess because there's a ticking clock, because it seems very, very easy that they just like, she's the one they got their eye on. So they just like read her emails and, oh, look, she's right. She's emailing 8 people. You'd think she would have taken some back channels for that, but.
Well, but that's, I mean, you're right about the ticking clock, right? She'd run out of money. They mentioned earlier they'd turned off her power.
Yeah.
So she was in sort of desperate straits, but she knew that she had her get out of jail free card with these names.
Yeah.
And at this point, she didn't know that Odo had caught anybody, right? Because from her point of view, she sends Quark to get the list. Her guy gets the list from Quark. We don't know that anybody's investigating or anybody knows about the list.
You don't think so? Maybe her guy didn't mention that he shot Quark dead.
We shot Quark dead, thinking have killed anyone who knew about the list or the deal at all.
But
Because Rom went away to go get his film camera.
That's it. That fixes it for me.
So she had no reason to be nervous about it. Also, she's not a hardened criminal, right? She's just a desperate lady. Odo thinks that these people on the list are being blackmailed because they were profiteering from the Cardassians during the occupation. He wants to bring the Widow in for questioning, and we see the Widow's buddy who shot Quark listening in. I'm scary. Look at me. I've got a
He's apparently very
Adam's
good at
family.
Yeah, he's got a 7 head instead of a
He's got
4
the opposite of me.
The Eddie, what are they called? The Eddie Munster.
The Eddie Munster.
Widow's
He's got
Peak.
Eddie Munster. I have no Munster. It just goes straight.
You've got the Eddie Vedder.
It's just sneaking back.
So this is the one other nit. So the whole episode's about how great everybody is at investigating, or Odo and the team. And yet we don't figure out that the henchman's there the whole time and he's just like eavesdropping on everyone's conversations. Nobody picks up on that.
Well, I mean, I guess why would they?
Come on. This weird guy's skulking around. Come on.
There's weird guys skulking around in every corner of the
I
entire
know.
station.
Okay, well then it gets more egregious later when we'll get to it.
That said, at some point, and I hate the surveillance state that we all live in, but like maybe throw a camera up or two on the promenade. That seems not unreasonable. And you'd think Quark would have cameras all over the place that he controlled, at least. Anyway, so we begin Act 5.
Unfortunately, they're all in the bathroom, if you catch me.
Ew.
Come on, Quark.
Quark gonna Quark. No, I get it. Or maybe Quark gonna pretend that he's interested in that when he's not really. And the mysterious. Very good point on our Patreon. So in Act 5, Odo speculates that his interest in justice might be a characteristic of his species.
Yeah, I love this monologue.
He says there's no room for loyalty or friendship or love in justice.
Foreshadow much?
Indeed, indeed. But the mystery of what Odo's species is like, because again, if you're the only one, you don't know what your characteristics of your species are. So you can only extrapolate from yourself. Is that specific to Odo, or is that his whole species? Really interesting questions as we move forward.
Right, but also, Keith, in the meta picture, is it not just a question? Is it another interesting way to reframe the human experience? Because we love to bluster and talk about how justice and various other moral edicts are so black and white, are very rigid, black and white, and should be viewed that way. In reality, we all know we are humans with human emotions, for better or for worse, with loyalties, with jealousies, with bad motives, good motives. And so it's all colored with these things. And so looking at things rigidly black and white isn't particularly a successful tactic. And Odo might be about to learn that.
Well, and I think as we're exploring the various parts of our human experience, the difference between rigidity and thinking that things are gray, you use sci-fi to really explore those things by having Odo representing rigidity and Quark representing moral flexibility, and their love story is inherent to the show, and they're learning from each other. Good sci-fi. Good stuff, guys. So we head back into the past, and Odo confronts Kira about her fake alibi. She continues to lie to him. She asks whose side is he on. She says that once she tells him the truth, you'll need to choose sides. She says she didn't kill him. When he was killed, she was sabotaging the ore processors. And she admits that she's a part of the underground, and that's why she needed an alibi. And if Odo tells on her, she will be executed. So, of course, Dukat walks in immediately as she's finishing her sentence, and Odo says she didn't kill Vatrick, but he does not mention the sabotage. So, in that moment, Odo immediately chooses sides. We head back to the present, and the Widow's Heavy kills the Bajoran guard, who sucks at his job. So he goes in to finish off Quark.
Yeah, so you remember when Odo was very specific about he thinks he's got it figured out, so he's like, send security down to protect Quark and blah, blah, blah. They sent this guy? That's it? They didn't put a lock on the door. They didn't put a camera up. This is what I mean. Like this
like, oh, flowers? Oh, yay.
Well, of course, come on in.
Yeah, flower. How so thoughtful.
And also, he blasted Quark with a blaster, but now his idea is let's go ahead and put a pillow over his face. Just smother him? Just blast his face off.
Well, maybe Odo decided to pay for the weapon detector package. She's like, hell with it. I'm going to buy the upgraded package.
Oh, sorry. So, but in that logic, sorry, sir, we can't let you in with your flowers because you got a phaser. So he goes, oh, okay, quick. I'll go put my phaser away. Now I'll come back in with flowers and I'll just smother him. Okay.
Well, and a knife. He had a knife.
Oh, that's right. He had a knife and a pillow.
He had a knife and a pillow, but makes you wonder why he was like, that knife just killed that Bajoran guard instantly. Mm-hmm. Let me use a pillow as opposed to just cut his throat. This guy sucked.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
Tough guy sucked.
But they were also the special effects department was like, also when you smother him, make sure you get it low. Do not deform the prosthetic.
Yeah, are you kidding me? We do not want to stop filming for 3 hours to fix this prosthetic. They're very expensive. So which again, use the knife. What are you doing?
But then also, thank God Odo was directly outside.
Well, it's Rom. Rom enters and
he
screams.
Yeah.
He screams. They fight a bit. Then Odo shows up and arrests the guy. Then, once Rom realizes he saved Quark, he starts screaming even louder. Hilarious. So the Widow, now wearing a flapper headband, is now on the station. That's right. Yeah, exactly. We're all gonna. Where's my brain? Do the Charleston.
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, if they all stopped to do the Charleston briefly,
holy crap,
this would be a 10 out of 10. All the self-sealing stem bolts if you
Yep.
stop and do the Charleston.
Doo-doo.
So she denies knowing the assassin, and she is thrown into the brig and asks for her lawyer. So they throw both the assassin and the widow
Get Bobby
in
Donnell
the
on the
brig.
line.
She says she didn't kill her husband. And Odo says, I know. At which point, Kira follows him into his office. He's figured out it was Kira, after all. And that Vatrick was a collaborator with the Cardassians, just like the other names on the list. And Kira was there to get the list of collaborators and apparently assassinate them. That's also why Odo was put on the case, because he needed to hide, Dukat needed to hide his connection to the list. Kira confesses that she did indeed kill Vatrick when he walked in on her. Odo says he misjudged her. She was a better liar than he thought. She didn't tell him later because she was afraid it would affect their friendship. Odo doesn't arrest her. But when she asks if he'll ever be able to trust her the same way again, he just puts his head down and we fade to black.
Awesome ending. But right before that, he says, she goes, I hope this doesn't affect, I didn't want it to affect our friendship. And he says, maybe it doesn't have to. But then this scene happens, they fade to black, and we don't get an answer. And it's the best non-ending, right? They could have done. I'm sure there was a draft where they were like, well, maybe it's just perfect. It's a perfect ending of it.
Yeah. No, and it is a rare in Trek, especially at this point, coming off of Next Generation. Next Generation would be very reticent to not tie that up and not to put things back together the way they would be, because we know we're going to come back next episode. This is still hanging over them. This is actual character progression and relationship progression, which is, I think, fascinating and great, and it all makes sense. And Odo, once again, is forced to pick what side. And for the second time, he picks Kira, which is interesting. So, Mike, you know what it's time for?
Let's do it.
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Blew it. Just totally blew it.
And now it's time for Mike and Deglio's Star Trek Vocabulary Quiz. Okay, this first one is easy. It is, what is a compressed tetryon beam?
That's the thing where they can pick locks?
No, that is the weapon they shot Quark with, which was on the premium plus weapon detection package Odo was not paying for.
Right.
Your next one, and then we'll see how close you were listening and put together context clue. What is the ore processing center?
The ore processing center is where they process the ore, Keith, and it's where Kira had to break in, that was her alibi for what she was doing on the station when she was really assassinating the plotters.
Which I think is important to remember what the station was there for to begin with. It was a mining station.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so big, and that's what's going on. That's why there's so much empty space on it, because there's no longer a mining station. All right. Now it is time to come along home, and I'm gonna get a present for you while the jingle's going.
Okay.
Okay, here we are at Quark's, and Mike, we do I don't know if you know, but we do a little show about Star Trek toys.
Look at my Star Trek toys!
Boy, you had that one queued up.
It's true.
And there is one figure, well, it's a couple figures, but here's one figure you have not seen yet.
Oh boy, okay.
So look at your screen. Maybe you'll recognize this.
Oh, I was going to ask earlier if there's an Odo in his like pre-DS9 days.
There sure is.
Is that a real one or is it a
No, it's a real
custom?
one.
That's cool.
So here is pre-DS9 Odo.
Through my like pixelated NDI feed, he looks like Michael Myers, but you know.
He does look like Michael Myers. It's all coming together.
Yeah.
It's great.
Synchronicity.
Synchronicity indeed. All right. So let's do wormholes in the plot, Mike. Did you find any wormholes in this plot?
To be honest, outside of the kind of like less than awesome henchman and sort of the breach of security of just letting him sort of skulk about without ever being on anyone's radar, that's really it for me. I thought, in fact, the lack of wormholes was one of my favorite parts of this episode. I thought if you're going to do a noir episode, a Sherlock Holmesian noir mystery episode, it better be... I always like a whodunit in that, you know, they gave us enough breadcrumbs, enough seeds to figure out the case along with Odo as we go along. And I thought that they did a really great job of that, and I was really interested. The pacing was great. I didn't find a lot of wormholes, Keith. You?
No, I think the level of security on the station sucks.
Yeah, we've hammered that before.
It needs to for the storytelling purposes. So I don't need to hammer home like Odo, our amazing investigator, is not actually that good of a security person. However, I think he would defend himself by saying this is an airport with no security. So there's crazy amounts of people coming through. It calls in criminals. There's very few of us and a lot of them. There's a lot of turnover. So there's not a lot that he can do sometimes. And he's being hamstrung by Federation restrictions. He'd like to be much more hardcore about, he wants to be John Ashcroft, but the Federation won't let him. So he is investigating with his hands tied behind his back. So maybe that's why there's not cameras. Maybe the Federation was like, no, we value our privacy to the point where we're not going to just put a camera on literally everything like we do today. So I don't know, maybe I fixed my own wormhole.
Okay.
But the rest of that, no, it really does all track. It's complex, right? There's actually several layers of this. And Kira's 3 different stories, because she had the initial story, she had her if shit goes wrong story, and then the real story. Love it.
Yep.
That's complex and interesting. She was a spy, and she's gonna have layers of that. So no, I really didn't have a lot of wormholes.
Yeah, she was more than a spy; she was an assassin.
Yeah. Although I'm not sure it wasn't her job to kill them all. She says he walked in on her, so she had to kill him. But clearly, whoever was on that list was going to get murdered by somebody.
Right.
Like somebody was going to take them out. And you can understand why. So let's do a favorite moment, Mike.
Wow, there's so many good ones. I'm going to pick the last scene. The very last scene between Kira, Nerys, and Odo, because it answers a lot of questions without answering any questions, right? There's no point put on it. It's just Odo and her. First of all, she's under no... I love that she's not shocked that he figured it out. She knows he figured it out. He knows he figured it out. And yet she gives him the same sort of, not ultimatum, but the same opportunity to turn her in or whatnot as she does in the past. It parallels again from the future. And he tacitly, you can see he's wrestling with it, but at the same time, he's grown in his respect and in his admiration and in his love for her. Yet he's still wrestling with that rigidity and what his idea of justice is and loyalty. It's wonderful. It's wonderfully acted. It's wonderfully written. The vibe is correct. It fits the rest of the episode, but it also presents the viewer with questions, right? They've portrayed the occupation, I think, effectively, but still, we learn a little bit something about Kira here. I mean, she's always
Oh, for sure.
she's
yeah.
always been very heroically framed in her behavior during the occupation, but here we learn that whether you agree with it or not, whether it's in the heat of a war that was right or wrong, it doesn't absolve her of having done those things and having lied about it for those 5 years, if by omission. And so we are left with some questions. We are left with some thoughts and some ponderings about characters we've come to love and trust. We're in a very similar position to Odo at the end of this episode, asking very similar questions.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to just think in that scene, because I was loving the episode up to that point, but then in that scene, and you think, oh, we sort of got played by her and the lie and the this and that and the blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that's when literally in my head, I was like, oh, they nailed it. Nailed it. Hashtag nailed it. So that's my favorite scene.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, it's funny that we kept mentioning duet, because this, obviously we spend more time on other characters than we did in duet, but in a lot of ways this is a sequel to it. And the duet is between Odo and Kira. And we're seeing as opposed to a conversation that takes place over a week, it's a conversation and exploration that takes place over 5 years between the two of them. And both of them, right, are about exploring the morality of the things that they did or had to do during the occupation. And I think it's fascinating. So yeah, I mean, I think there were some really funny like rom moments, and that was kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, this final scene, I think, like you said, sticks the landing. It nails the landing in a way that is a little bit surprising. Not necessarily for Deep Space Nine, because Deep Space Nine is thoughtful like this and is brave enough to explore the grays here. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think this whole episode hinges on that final scene that elevates it from a standard whodunit to a very complex and adult and moving exploration of this. So, Mike, now it's time to throw out some self-sealing stem bolts.
I think they nailed it. I really love this episode, and I love that they not only were able to tell a really impactful story, a really interesting mystery, they trimmed the fat really well. With the exception of Henchman, who was sort of, a little bit of he was a weak character. Everyone else, anyone who was on screen had an interesting, compelling narrative. You could argue that the widow, I get we learn of her motivations. You actually presented it really well, the way her ticking clock and that she was out of money and all those things. I would have maybe, if it was a little longer, I maybe would have loved to see a little bit more about that, right? Because I think it adds even an extra dimension of what her where she was coming from, right? And why that backstory of her having that nest egg of the blackmail is actually pretty interesting. And then how Dukat ties into it, that's really interesting too, but that's another tale for another day, right? But even every time you see Dukat on screen, his duplicity or his potential duplicity is fascinating, because he's still in the present. We know of his tete-a-tete, his alliance with Sisko, with Odo, but we know it's fraught. We know that there's tension. We know that there's machinations behind the scenes, and we get all kinds of that goodness here too. Everything we see in the past, aesthetically, story-wise, awesome, really powerful. Just when I thought Kira couldn't get more nuanced, she's even more nuanced and interesting as a character to me. Odo as well. And then on top of that, they were able to do the Ferengi humor stuff really well. I thought Rom handled it really well, this episode being sort of the first time he's allowed sort of a lead part with Quark being incapacitated the whole episode.
Right, yeah.
And on top of that, it does what we always talk about, we love about sci-fi. It frames a very human question with sci-fi trappings, and it gives Odo, a very non-human species character, very human moral quandaries and has them explain them. And not only that, it also is a pretty awesome noir episode, noir mystery.
Yeah.
And a non-murder mystery, even though there's a murder in the past. Really cool. Just everything about it really worked for me. I would venture to say, in my limited catalog of episodes thus far, my favorite episode in season 2, easy.
Yeah.
In the running for my favorite episode, period. In the running. I love genre exploration. I love when we make tonal shifts. And so I think it's interesting that we were a little heightened to this episode. I thought the score was incredible. I thought the lighting was intense and really cool. It set the mood great. I'm giving it 91.5 self-sealing stem bolts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a terrific episode. And it's a terrific episode that easily could have been not terrific. I think is the interesting thing about it, because we start with obviously we're doing a film noir murder mystery. We're doing our own sort of like Odo as Dixon Hill sort of a deal. We have a stock femme fatale. We have the heavy going around, and it easily could have been a like standard Odo solves a murder, whatever. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But what they did was they found a way to integrate our characters into the story where we are learning new things about each of our characters. We're developing our characters, both through backstory and through them changing in the present in a way that a lot of the episodes forget to do. We come out of this knowing more about each of these characters. The station itself is a character. And, seeing what the station looked like in the occupation and the change in the physical, the lighting, the fencing, the whatever, it's all a major character on the show. And we learn more. We're never going to look at the promenade again and not think about, well, there used to be a fence in here blocking the Bajorans from the Cardassians. Like that this happy promenade used to be a tool of oppression.
Yeah.
And it really does change all of that. I think obviously the character of Odo, I think Renee gives an amazing performance non-verbally. I mentioned his body language in the past versus the present, and watching him change, his confidence changed, his knowing where he fits in the world. You can see that he knows better where he fits in the world in the present, just in his physicality. And I think that is just a terrific performance. I thought Nana Visitor did a fantastic job here as well. Both of these characters are in the early lead for the most interesting characters on the show. And watching, and there's a third character, right? There's Odo, there's Kira, but then there's Odo and Kira.
Yeah.
Their relationship as a character is really interesting. And I really, and the fact that they have this much backstory. And you can say the most interesting relationships are Odo and Kira and Odo and Quark. And we see why now, because of this history that they have.
Mm-hmm.
They have so much more relationship momentum than any other characters here other than Dax and Cisco.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And I really like that they took a stock idea and used it to deepen and progress the show. And these are contexts we're going to carry with us forever now. Right, our understanding of the station, understanding of Kira, understanding of Odo, understanding of their relationships, understanding Odo and Quark's relationship. This is going to inform every subsequent episode moving forward, and that is good TV. That's good writing, and I think it's an excellent episode. So yeah, I mean, were there a couple of things that were a little iffy? I mean, the henchman was bad. The wife could have been much more interesting. She was very stock femme fatale. But again, had they made her more interesting, it would have detracted from what this episode really is. I mean, she's the potted plant that needs to be there, right? Because this is about Odo and Kira. That's what this is about. And we actually don't want those other things to distract us from that.
Mm-hmm.
It is duet part 2, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is. I think it's easily the best episode of season 2 so far. Yeah, I think for that, I'm going to give it 90 self-sealing stem bolts. So, yeah, really good episode, fun stuff. Mike, are you having fun on Deep Space Nine?
Dude, loving it. This one more so than the practice. In fact, I have to make myself not watch reruns, like when I see them on TV. And when I pop up the Hulu and it's like, hey, do you want to continue watching Deep Space Nine? I have to be like, I'd like to. I sure would. In fact, Keith, as you know, because I've been emailing you, I've been text messaging you. I find myself watching interviews with Armin Shimmerman on
Don't do it
with Live and Regis and Kathy Lee, and I just right. I wanna look at them at Comic-Con and at
but you have to make a deal with me though.
Yeah.
And that is, you can watch interviews and read stuff about it only up until the episode that we're watching.
Well, that's hard to do, but that's
so
why I'm trying to
spoilers.
Yeah, it is hard. The spoilers are everywhere, especially you watch 1 or 2 videos and then you're into that algorithm and they start feeding me stuff, and I'm trying so desperately to avoid it.
Yeah, don't do it.
To be fair, and I say this with all sincerity, I know nothing about the fates of these characters, about the plot twists that are coming. I think at some point I took my headphones off when we were interviewing Chris for the other show, and like you guys were talking about something, and I did my best. I've done my best to avoid everything, so I hope that remains. I know we have a lot of podcasts left, so we'll see.
Keep going with the earmuffs, because there is. I mean, and that, the crazy thing is, and I keep saying it, and I keep saying it, and I keep saying it. The show hasn't even really started yet,
which is nuts to me. Yeah,
like we haven't really begun the story yet.
I know there's like video games I want to play, but they're like based in the lore starting in like season 4, I think. So
you definitely can't. No.
Anyhow.
But look, it's coming. We do this once a week.
I know.
A year from now, you're going to be right into it.
I know. You know who else will be into it a year from now, Keith?
Who's that?
Hopefully 4 slides of patrons.
Probably not.
If you'd like to get in on the ground floor of being a producer on the show, you can do so. Thanks.
If you want to get in on the only floor,
thanks to our patrons. You can join them at patreon.com/K&M. Keith, we did it. We did it.
Next week, we are going to be discussing Second Sight. So till then, check out K&M Geekly. Look at my Star Trek toys. Thank you for watching. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.